What is up, DW Nation? You already know what time it is. It's Thursday, so you know what that means. I'm coming to you guys for another AEW Dynamite Recap. Big things happened on Dynamite this past week. We saw things like Shaq call out Cody Rhodes to a match at Revolution. We saw another thing where we saw a banger of a match between Jungle Boy Jack Perry and Dax Harwood of FTR. And then in the main event for Dynamite, we saw the Elite versus the Dark Order. So without further ado, I am Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and let's hop right into it. So, our first match of the night is Eddie Kingston versus Lance Archer. Literally the entire match, we see Lance Archer dominate Eddie Kingston, targeting his back and showing off also nice sets of athleticism, as he had a nice old school variation call into The Undertaker, where he jumps off of the top rope for a backflip on Eddie Kingston, showing his athleticism for a big guy. But he was avoiding obvious covers. He clearly had the match in the bag, but he was way more focused on putting punishment on Eddie Kingston than he was on winning the match. And this showed as later on in the match where we saw the Butcher and the Blade dragging Jake the Snake Roberts from backstage onto the stage. And this distracts Lance Archer enough to where the Bunny comes to Eddie Kingston's aid, handing him a set of brass knucks. And then Eddie Kingston hits Lance Archer with a spinning back fist once Lance Archer catches his attention. And then we see Eddie Kingston pick up the win off of this move. And then after the match, we end up seeing the Butcher and the Blade hitting their finisher on Lance Archer. And then of course they set up Lance Archer again for Eddie Kingston to hit another spinning back fist. Next up, we get ourselves a good old promo from Jon Moxley as he promotes the 6-man tag match that's happening next week at Beach Break, where he talks about pretty much how the Elite Boys always have problems. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks always got some scuffling issues with either the Good Brothers or Hangman Adam Page. It just never ends, and he calls it an episode of the Young and the Restless. And I mean, I don't disagree with him. Then, of course, he talks about the Lucha Bros journey as they used to work with Eddie Kingston, who Mox had beef with. Now they're working with Pac, and now they're going after Eddie Kingston. And he just talks about how literally the journey is going around, but he's a simple man. He only trusts two things, and that's his left fist and his right fist. And he can't wait for this 6-man tag match as he's starting to feel this feels for gang warfare. And I'm excited with him. Let's get it, John. So our second match of the night was the Varsity Blondes versus the Inner Circles, MJF and Chris Jericho. At the beginning of the match, we saw MJF grab the microphone and remind Griff Garrison of their last encounter. As literally their last encounter, we saw MJF just humiliate Griff Garrison, forcing him to call himself undefeated and just literally cutting promos in the middle of their match as he was beating down Griff Garrison. Well, sadly to say, MJF, this is not the same Griff Garrison from last year, as he's changed a whole lot, and we see the Varsity Blondes take control for most of this match, with Griff Garrison putting on a show, displaying himself as a very, very promising talent for AEW's young crop that's coming up. But with this, inevitably makes a bigger mistake when Brian Pillman Jr. ends up going up top, going to look to hit a double axe handle on Chris Jericho, which Jericho reverses into the Judas effect and hits a lion salt for the win, picking up a win for MJF and Chris Jericho as they make their chase to the AEW World Heavyweight Championships. Next up, we see a promo from Pac as he literally just talks about how he's disappointed in Kenny Omega, as he's become a snake in the grass and really has defaced and devalued AEW World Championship, going from breaking the Gentleman's Clause to bringing in the Good Brothers to attack Jon Moxley and then to attack Pentagon L0M last week. And it's looking like we're going to pick up where we left off between Kenny Omega and Pac from the beginning of last year. And boy, oh boy, I'm excited for this one. Next up, we get a promo in the ring with Tony Schiavone talking to Cody Rhodes and his decision in response to Shaq calling him out for Revolution. But not only did he call him out, he also called out Miss Brandy Rhodes. Well, there's a problem with that. Miss Brandy is also pregnant. So it's looking like it's a very conflicting decision for Cody, as he talks about his journey to becoming a father as being the forefront of his mind. And he leaves this decision to his coach, Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson also agrees with him. He said it should be in the forefront of his mind, but he reminds him of a story of Dusty Rhodes, as he had a 30-minute match with Tully Blanchard back in the day, and then catching a flight to seeing his son being born, and that son being Cody Rhodes. And this makes Cody actually emotional. And then Arn just talks about a fire, and he talks about how Jade Cargill doesn't have to wrestle Brandy Rhodes, and he calls out Miss Red Velvet. And Miss Red Velvet is very, very fired up as she's looking to get some retribution against Jade Cargill from their last encounter, and talks about how Jade is just all talk and no show, and it's looking like we are seeing Red Velvet and Cody Rhodes challenging Shaq and Jade Cargill at Revolution. So next up, our next match of the night, we see Hangman Adam Page versus Ryan Nevin, where we see Adam Page controlling the match for the most part, but we see Ryan actually getting in some offense, calling back to his brother, who is Dolph Ziggler. He's using most of his arsenal throughout the entire match. And we also see Big Money Matt Hardy come out to support Hangman Page. But we end up seeing the experience of Hangman Adam Page taking over the match as he sets up these clotheslines, these vicious and beautiful clotheslines in my mind. And all to set up for the buckshot lariat for the win for Hangman Adam Page. As this is going on, we see Hangman celebrate, and we see Matt Hardy start to go to the back. But as this is going on, we see Page calling Matt Hardy back into the ring, and Tony Schiavone just asking Matt Hardy what was the whole purpose for him coming out to support Hangman Page. And where Matt Hardy actually talks about how he actually is feeling for Hangman Page. He actually wants to support Page and let him know that first, he's a good person no matter what is going on with the Dark Order or what has ever happened with the Elite, with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. He lets him know that Matt can be Hangman's guiding hand, and if he needs any help from him in the future, that he will always be there for him. Now our next match, which was a beauty. We see the Jungle Boy Jack Perry versus Dax Harwood of FTR, where this starts off nice and even in the beginning during the filling out process, but this turns into Dax Harwood controlling most of the match as he grounds Jungle Boy Jack Perry, slingshotting him into the outside barricade. Now, this match is going back and forth. We're seeing a lot of Dax Harwood hitting big moves and going for covers, but we're seeing also a lot of Jack Perry kicking out, showing and proving that he's not going to quit. Now, what this ends up turning into is a bunch of pin combinations between them back and forth, going from schoolboy to back roll up to the crucifix pin, where we see a lot of back and forth, and this ends up turning around into Jack Perry's favor as he hits the snare trap and ends up submitting Dax Harwood. Now, after the match, this is where FTR gets their comeuppance as they blind Luchasaurus with some powder, and they send him into the ring post, and then they attack Jack Perry. As after they attack Jack Perry, Luchasaurus brings his way back into the ring, and they hit this triple spike power driver. And then they handcuff Luchasaurus and they cut off his horns. As they go and get done with that, they go cut off Jungle Boy's hair, and then this brings out Marco Stunt, SCU, and Top Flight to their aid. Another thing we saw throughout the night was the build up for the street fight between Sting and Darby Allin versus Team Taz's Brian Cage and Ricky Starks, where at the beginning of the show we see a promo from Darby Allin and Sting as Sting talks about Darby Allin, calling him a hooligan, and Darby is just heated. He's ready for this match. He is super tired of Team Taz, and we see him they're in this nice scenery in the middle of nowhere where they got some windows, and Darby just takes the skateboard and he starts smashing some windows. And then we see Sting go from very happy-go-lucky to very, very serious as he takes his baseball bat and he smacks a bunch of windows and calls himself a hooligan, and he can't wait for this match either. So this goes over to the next promo where we see Team Taz, where we see Taz cutting the promo and letting them know we bout that action. Y'all ain't ready for the streets because we come from the streets. But what we also see is Taz is on Slash, and we see Powerhouse Hop go to this table with a set of guys as they have Darby Allin and Sting merch. Well, Team Taz has a problem with that, so they go to attack them. All four of them attack these two poor little guys, and we actually see Brian Cage take one of the guys and actually slingshots him just straight into the truck and just head first. So I'm excited for this Revolution match, and it's looking like we're going to see and get a lot of, worth our money. And this is going to be a nice tag match. I can't wait. The next match we get is Britt Baker versus Shaina. And as this is going on, we see a nice, very nice feeling out process where it displays both of their technical ability, which I believe Britt Baker's is very underrated, and she showed why she should be more appreciated as a technical wrestler. But we also see Shauna's nice athleticism as she takes over for the most part of this feeling out process. Now, where Britt Baker actually takes over is the fact that Shaina keeps taking her focus off of the match to pander to the crowd, and Baker ends up taking advantage of this with a nice sling blade outside the ring onto the floor area. Now, we actually see Shaina start to build up momentum again. As this is going on, we actually see the technical ability of Britt Baker overshadowing her again as she locks in the lockjaw for a win. And then, of course, after the match, Britt ain't done. Her and Reba start to attack Shaina, and she starts to lock in the lockjaw again. But we hear the music of Thunder Rosa as Thunder Rosa comes out and sends Britt Baker and Reba out to retreat. Now, finally, the main event, where we see the Elites, Young Bucks, and Good Brothers versus the Dark Order's Ryan Reynolds, John Silver, Stu Grayson, and Evil Uno. Now, before the match, we actually see a backstage interview between the Bucks and the Good Brothers as we start to see some cohesiveness and we start some togetherness from the Elite. But, of course, this is always too good to be true. As Kenny Omega comes up and we start to see the tension start to overcloud the whole situation, as Kenny's not happy with what the Young Bucks have done to Don, and of course Don Callis is being overly dramatic like always. So we actually end up getting the match as we see the Elite are clicking at full cylinders, and then of course we see a hot tag from Stu Grayson, and Stu Grayson runs wild. We see springboard action, then we also see fast, strong strikes, and he finishes off with a frog splash. And then we see a hot tag from John Silver as he just runs wild and shows why they call him the Human Cannonball. As he goes in, knocks out Matt Jackson from inside the ring, then he goes out and he just runs crazy, going around the whole entire outside area, just taking out the Elite one by one. And then ultimately what we see is Nick Jackson, as he gets tagged in by Matt, we see him have a super kick party. He just goes crazy on the Dark Order. And then what we see is a nice three-way triple apron powerbomb, where is Nick Jackson and the Good Brothers as they hit the apron powerbombs on the Dark Order. And this sets up a magic killer from the Good Brothers and also a Meltzer driver from the Young Bucks for the win. But we ain't done yet, of course, where we find out the news that we will be having a number one contendership match in a battle royal with the winners of this tag team battle royal to wrestle the Young Bucks at Revolution for the AEW tag championships. But here's the kicker: the Young Bucks are also in this match, and if they win the match, they can choose who they want to wrestle at Revolution, and they start to tease a possible match against the Good Brothers. And as this is going on, we see Rey Fenix springboard into the ring, taking out the Young Bucks. And of course, the Good Brothers look to set them up. And as this is going on, we see Jon Moxley coming from the crowd area to aid Rey Fenix. And of course, as they fight off the Good Brothers, Kenny Omega comes out and Jon Moxley hits a wicked paradigm shift before Kenny Omega can do anything. Well, that's how we ended the show. And what a nice fast-paced way to end the show. Great show overall, and I always appreciate what AEW puts on. But until next time, I'm Kevin Jones, and that was wrestling.